And we believe that that can affect the bill. It's going to affect the tax membership.
Well, thank you for being here. We'll go ahead and get started until after 10. I'm Craig Clark. I'm the Allegany County Executive Director for the, Allegany County IDA Executive Director. Just read a little bit of context of what we're here for, the public meeting, and then we'll open it up for comments. The public hearing is not for project review, but it's for public comments of a possible Allegany County IDA financial assistance agreement of a wind energy generating project. Alle-Catt Wind Energy, LLC, a state Delaware limited liability company, has the acquisition of an interest in multiple parcels of land in the towns of Centerville and Rushford, Allegany County, New York, for various parcels of land scattered throughout amongst approximately 15,000 leased acres located in the northwestern corner of Rushford throughout town of Centerville. The project consists of the construction of various components to be located on the land, including but not limited to the following: approximately 49 wind turbine generators, approximately 13 of such generators in the town of Rushford and 36 in the town of Centerville, for a total of 143.6 megawatts. All the foregoing is to constitute a wind energy generating facility to be owned and operated by Alle-Catt Wind Energy. The project is a $187.6 million project in Allegany County, with a proposed 118 construction jobs and 4 to 5 operational jobs, with anticipated start sometime in late 2020 and an 18-month anticipated length of construction. The Allegany County IDA is proposing an incentive package for the project of approximately $1.35 million exemptions for construction and equipment materials for sales tax, and Alle-Catt Wind Energy is proposing to pay approximately $17.45 million in a pilot agreement over a proposed 20 years of the pilot. After that, basically, again, I'll just remind you, not for project review, but just for the financial assistance and incentive agreement. And we're opening for public comment. We may not make anything but just take your comments, but we'll use those in our discussion sometimes in February or March as far as the actual agreement. Just to speed it up and to make sure everybody has time, we'll start out with, we'd like to have everyone let you know who they are for the record and also where you're from, and we'll limit to start with 2 minutes with your comments. We'll give you more time because we'll be here for quite a while, but that way we can get everybody's comments in. And are there any public comments? Can you hear me? Okay.
Do you want me to go to a certain spot? Or read it from here?
That's fine. I think she's got a.
I just want to make sure that it's recorded.
And also make sure you first introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Cynthia Austin McCullough. I'm representing the family farm, which my family has owned since 1917 on Brookside Road. We own 3 taxable parcels off Brookside Road. And my first comment is that for the date of 12/30/2019, nothing would assure low participation more than a meeting held between Christmas and New Year's. I think that the only notice that was brought to my attention was in the Wellsville paper, and I object highly to something of such importance being hidden in the back publication of a little small town paper, not even the Olean paper. As for Allegany County Industrial Development Agency, the participation in the Rushford Town Board meetings I don't see was very vocal or present. I could be mistaken. I have been attending since June when the hearing was held in Arcade. I'm also interested that the notice in the paper says that there's now 13 turbines in Rushford, which from my last time I attended a meeting, it was between 9 and 11. So I don't know how every time there's something published, it kind of sneaks in with some extras. In the statement published in the paper, the acquisition of multiple parcels of land and the construction of approximately 49 turbines with an average of 3 MW each and you're asking for exemption of certain sales and use taxes, the real property taxes, and the real estate transfer taxes. I would like to know on my family's property on Brookside Road, when do we get a break in our taxes? If we're subjected to turbines behind us, to the side of us, in front of us, and the total destruction of our relationships with families that have been helpful and vital to each other on Brookside Road. I know you guys think that's not a big deal, but to me, that's a huge deal. The agency has not made a determination, your statement says, pursuant to Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law, the SEQR Act, regarding the potential environmental impact of the project. What about the health issues? Specifically, what about resale? What about guarantee of value to our family property? We will experience loss of enjoyment, quiet rural visual from infrasound, flicker, bird habitat loss, potential for recreational use gone, access to the property by road commandeered by construction. We were here first. The agency should guarantee at the minimum no loss of value and that our health won't be affected. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have
Sure.
a comment.
Could you just give me your name?
Ed Russin and Lori,
Okay.
area K on the lake,
Okay.
and I totally agree with the young lady over here. I bet you less than 90% of the people are here to voice their opinions. We're probably 5–7% here to talk. So, but I'm totally agree with you.
What he's saying is that the date and the time of this meeting, with the lack of getting the word out there. We're lake residents. We do have another home, but most of the lake is vacant in the middle of winter. Everybody, especially on the holiday break, is either in Florida, Texas, Arizona, who knows where they are, but they're not here. But they all do have opinions, and they all do have real substantial investments on the lake. And from what I know, I'm in the travel business, so I travel the world constantly. But what I know from areas that have had the turbines, values do go down. So I agree with you that you should at least have a guaranteed value put in there. And with regards to spending money by the county for these things, I also agree that it's a shame that well, let me back up. I didn't think that commercial businesses were allowed in this district. And I believe that Invenergy, that's how you say it, is a commercial, that's what they are. They're a corporate commercial company. And I just didn't think that that was allowed in the zoning of this district. So why they're getting a break and at everybody else's expense is kind of sad.
Would you identify yourself, please?
Yes, Lori Russin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Marty Savato, I live on the lake, but I'm a year-round resident. I want to go back to what was said previously. Why is this meeting scheduled at this time? Why is it scheduled in the morning when people work and can't be here? Why? I want an answer for that. Why was it scheduled this way?
Traditionally, well before me, that's when our public hearings have always been scheduled, either in the morning or in the afternoon. I'll have to look into that, okay? But we didn't try to avoid anything.
No.
I didn't try to avoid anything. That's what it's always been done.
How could you not try to avoid anything? You have it between Christmas and New Year's.
Right.
And at 10 o'clock in the morning when many people work, and the next one isn't even in the evening. It's
Right.
still in the afternoon. That's to avoid. We're in this small room because you anticipated you wouldn't have very many people here. There hasn't been, someone in this town talked to me about ethics. This is not ethical. This whole setup was not ethical. There has been no transparency in how this has been unrolled. And although it affects the people that own the property, that are putting these huge, 200 feet taller than any we've ever seen, windmills, it affects everyone in the town. And I don't understand why there hasn't been more opportunity for people to voice their concerns. At the last board meeting I went to, the directors sat in the front and rolled their eyes at people that were trying to explain their concerns. That's not right, and this is not right.
Hi, I'm Muriel Kummer. I'm a resident of Rushford, newly resident of Rushford, only been here 3 years. Totally against this. I agree with everything anybody has said here as far as the transparency. I'm a snowbird. Your next meeting is going to be in February and March. How many snowbirds are back by February or March? And half of the people around the lake who are permanent residents are probably down in Florida. I happened to be up here at this time to catch this meeting by chance because my husband saw it on Facebook that the meeting was going to be today, which is totally bogus. It's absolutely ridiculous. What you're doing to this town is awful. End of story.
I didn't catch your name, Mary.
Muriel Kummer, K-U-M-M-E-R.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Vanette Dexter. I'm a Rushford full-time resident. I live here, I work here. I bring my family here from the city to have fun. I purchased my home from the federal government, which I had to pay real estate taxes, transfer taxes, and everything else. The federal government charges me taxes. I don't think these people need a tax break. They're getting enough from Governor Cuomo in tax breaks. They're getting so much more money than they're letting on, and I think this is ridiculous. The pilot is ridiculous because at 10 windmills, they were going to give Rushford $30,000. That's $3,000 per windmill. That's a little bit more than what my home is worth on the tax roll. So you're telling me a 600-foot windmill is only worth about $50,000? No, no payment in lieu of taxes. They need to pay their fair share like us residents, us hard-working folk do. They called us country bumpkins at a previous meeting about 18 months ago. We're all educated. We're all very smart. We all know why we live here, why we visit here, and why we have property here, where people like them, they might come down from the city to visit, or they might winter somewhere else. We love Rushford. We don't love windmills. They're ugly, they're terrible, and they're being sly. And sly does not work. Sly is what our former board was here in Rushford. That's why most of them are gone. We don't need this. We don't want it. Please have them move it somewhere else, like a brownstone field, some waste of land. Not good, beautiful land, where eagles and stuff are now soaring. That wasn't here 2 years ago when I bought my house, but now there's eagles here.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is John Cady. I live here year-round on the lake. I've been in the area since 1969. I agree with people talking about the transparency and lack of it. I agree. I heard this from a person who heard a person who heard a person from it. Holding a meeting like this in the middle of the day is absolutely ridiculous. Also, to post it in a paper that is not our town paper, or I don't know if Centerville's either. You're holding a meeting there this afternoon. Our paper is Cuba. You put it in Wellsville. How many people here get Wellsville?
Zero.
And you should hold it in if you want transparency, hold it in the summer and hold it on a weekday or a weekend when people are here that live here. I happen to live here full-time like Muriel. Well, not like Muriel because but they're here a lot. But some of the other people, I live here full-time. There's no transparency to this at all. It's like you're hiding it in a corner. That tells me something doesn't smell right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Joe Donnelly. I also own a house on Rushford Lake, right on the lake, off of 49. I know the only way we found out about this meeting was through Facebook. But what are we getting? Roughly, I pay $10,000 a year in tax. What kind of break are we getting on our taxes? Like you guys getting a break on your taxes, what are we getting back on our taxes? Or how is it gonna benefit us? I know you live out there, we don't live on the country, so we probably won't see the windmills, it won't be on our property, but even.
You'll see, I live in county, you'll see all of that.
Okay, but what are, if it's gonna go ahead and cut my taxes 50%, that's not bad, that's $5,000 a year.
Where'd you get
Or
that
50.
number from?
I'm just saying, I don't know what the number is. Well, I was never told a number, but if it does count it.
Taxes, and we're not gonna benefit from this power.
Well, if that's the case, then I agree with you. But if there is some type of a benefit that is gonna save us 50%, 25%, or 30%.
You can ask your town board about that. Essentially, there's a host community agreement, and it's up to the town board what they do with that host community money. It may give you a break in your town tax, but that's it, not your county, not your state, not your school.
So it's gonna be a little.
So what's the smallest of all your taxes? It's your town tax. That's the only
They only wanna
savings
give
you may
Rushford
see.
$30,000.
Well, then,
Okay.
Plus your property value will not be what it was.
What it was.
before.
What good is a tax break if the property?
well, I think it will be. Ours will be
Excuse
because
me.
it's right on the lake. We pay for the
So we
lake.
can have a better record, because we can make sure we know who's speaking.
Sorry
I
about
apologize.
that.
I know, I
I'm a little
understand.
fired up right now.
I know that. I'm just trying to make sure that we kind of know who's speaking, so we have some kind of a record, that's all. Yes.
Okay, my name is Charles Bliss, and I am on the town board. I really don't remember rolling my eyes when anybody was speaking. I tried to pay very close attention, and contrary to what one other gentleman said once, I read everything that he's given me. I didn't just throw it away. As far as the money, the host community agreement stuff, it's not $30,000 for the project. It's, what was that, close to $30,000 per windmill.
How much?
About $30,000 per windmill.
No.
Huh? Who says no? That's in the host community agreement.
Is that annually, or?
That's annually. It's going to be somewhere, and I didn't bring the numbers with me, it's $5,850 per megawatt of installed capacity. So that's about $300,000, or a little bit more than $300,000 a year. Now, if they do put up 13, it'll probably be more than that. The 50% that he was talking about, $300,000 would be about 50% of the general fund for the town of Rushford, meaning the taxes you would pay probably wouldn't go down to all that because we got some catching up to do, but the taxes will go down. Now, and your Allegany County taxes will go down because part of that goes to Allegany County. They get part of this too also. As far as the pilot agreement goes, we also get money from that, and you can get a pilot agreement if you sell your house to the ID. Well, you can't because that's residential property. But what they do is they have to, Allegany County IDA, in addition to getting the pilot funds, and the county gets something like 87% or something like that of the money from the pilot program. And the last I checked, the money that Invenergy's paying is actually more at the present time than we would get in property taxes if the windmills were directly assessed. But the IDAs are set up because this state is such a high tax state that they gotta do something to incite businesses to come in. So the statements about property taxes not going down are false. They are paying about what they'd be paying. There are other benefits and sales tax and things like that, but they make up for that in the pilot agreement. I've been involved in a lot of these projects, and I know a lot of people in various towns quite closely. And I called one guy up the other day and asked him what he thinks of the wind turbines, because he lives in a town, and he said he's about 1,600 feet away. His property values have gone up. He's actually been offered more money. And part of the reason for that is the property taxes are a lot lower. It's cheaper to live there. There was something brought up in one of the meetings about campsites and everything else, people moving out. I've seen that stuff, and I was at 2 large campsites over the summer, and there were wind turbines there, and I asked the managers or the owners what people had to say about the windmills, and I asked them, has anybody complained about them? They said, no. Has your membership gone down? No. So, and the last thing, and I want to address this to the IDA board, Allegany County is in a tough position. I mean, we're losing dresser, we'll probably lose preheater, Kmart's gone out. I was at one project in the city of Corning that I worked on for several years. It was the Market Street Restoration Project, and they were trying to restore their downtown. And the head of the agency said, we're in competition with the Mart brothers, Walmart and Kmart. Well, we don't have Walmart and Kmart in a small town. Our taxes go up. Our costs go up, which means our taxes have to go up, and we have to look at any opportunity to bring additional income in the town. We're never going to have a Walmart. We aren't going to have a large manufacturing facility. So we have to look at what's available out there to bring additional income to the town, which will benefit every taxpayer in the town of Rushford.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Thomas Heim. Live on Brookside Road. I own a campground. Me and my wife bought it 7 years ago. We have, it was just a crap place. We have 7 years. We build it up, fix it up. We just had a campground in the area that's closing up, so we're going to be absolutely full. We have people that have been there for 2 generations that are going to be within 1,200 foot of a tower. Now, I'm not calling somebody and saying this guy said to that guy. That's like Adam Schiff, for crepe's sakes. I got people that say they've been there for 2 generations, they've raised their kids there. They say if towers are going in, they're leaving. What does that do to my property value? And this is factual stuff.
Well, that's why I want the comments.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Stephanie Milks, President of Freedom United. I am also an active advocate for the residents of all 5 host towns of the Alle-Catt project. The first comment I would like to make is let's look at the math. There's approximately 35 people here right now. In the 2010 census for Centerville and Rushford, that's 1,974 people. And we have 35 here, and there's 49,000 roughly for the town of Allegany. This is inexcusable. This is a poor timing. This is absolutely non-transparent. You need to reschedule and have another one for when more people can come here. I am only here because my husband happened to take time off in between the holidays. He's home with my young boys. People are at home with their children right now. They are hosting family from out of town, or they are out of town themselves. I would also like to address Charles Bliss's comments about the money, and also a lot of people want to know about what kind of tax breaks that they think they're going to get. So if there's $5,800 per megawatt times if they're going to use a 3 megawatt turbine, it's hard to say at this point, and there's roughly 13. That brings it to approximately $226,000 per year to the town of Rushford. Is anyone here aware of what the overall town tax levy in Rushford is? And does that cover it? I highly doubt it. Freedom's is $508,000 per year, our tax levy. Also, if you're looking for an estimate of what you're going to save per year in taxes, in Freedom, for a house that's assessed at $100,000, and many of you in our area are assessed at much less than that, you're looking at a savings of about $400 per year in town taxes. I will use Pioneer because they also like to claim, oh, the savings in the school taxes. We have a $57 million budget in Pioneer. Invenergy's giving roughly $268,000 to the school. That's less than 0.05%. Wow. Don't spend that half a penny, too fast. I know Franklinville's looking at, I believe, $61,000 to their school. How many millions of dollars in their tax budget are they getting? And as the saying goes, there are two sides to every coin. There's only going to be about 65 leaseholders in the entire Allegany County for Alle-Catt project area versus, again, the 1,974 residents. I mean, we're looking at over 1,900 of your Centerville and Rushford residents that are not going to get a direct benefit from this at all. One side of the coin, Allegany County might get a small portion of between 11 and 13 full-time equivalent jobs, and a small portion of employment of local construction for about 9 months. I just heard you say 18 months, but I did see a calendar in Exhibit 27 of Invenergy's own application, and I also did bring it for you. There is
I've got a copy of it.
Okay, there's the table, the estimated construction workforce by month and quarter. That 400 jobs that they are talking about only lands in July and August. Otherwise, you're looking at, 138 jobs in April, 115 in November and December, so on and so forth. So let's look at the facts here. Let's look at everything across the board. It's easy to say, oh, 400 jobs for the construction. Let's look at the real story here. On one side of the coin, excuse me, another one of the adverse impacts that I would like to highlight is the shadow flicker, expected to be for approximately 1,368 receptors within the Alle-Catt project. I did pull several receptors just for Centerville and Rushford so that you can look at the impacts that these residents are going to get. And this is just a very, very small sampling of what there actually is. You've got non-participating residents getting over 80 hours of flicker in a year on their properties. They're looking at durations of roughly 241 days per year that this could happen. I mean, I understand that it's only when it's sunny mornings and sunny evenings, but they're also looking at up to an hour and 16 minutes of flicker per day on their properties. We've got another one. There's a participant. I don't know if the participants are even aware of what kind of flicker they're going to get, but there's one in Centerville that's going to get over 89 hours on their property for over 2 hours a day when it is sunny, whether it's the morning or the evening. I don't think these people are even aware. And then Rushford, there is someone, a participating resident, who would be getting over 3 hours of flicker per day. Is that worth your $400 tax break or $200 tax break if you've only got a $50,000 assessment on your property? And then I'm going to provide to you as well the flicker testimony that I submitted to the DPS. It is all derived directly from Invenergy's shadow flicker study. It's all accurate. It's all their numbers. I have provided it here. I do request that you take a look at that. Because who's going to be buying these properties? Who's going to be developing these properties? What is the long-term tax base that you're looking at if no one's willing to come out here and build or develop their property. So there are two sides to every coin. Which side of the coin are you going to tax?
Is that the same thing you sent me this morning?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There is one other point that I forgot to make, and this is regarding the transparency. The IDA said that they emailed our town supervisor on December 13th and told him about this meeting. As a town board member, I have the same problem as you. I'm not really happy that I had to find out about this on Facebook.
I'm glad I did. I wouldn't have known. This is the issue I've had all year long with trying to get information from our town supervisor.
Charlie, are you not a member of Fire Hall?
Yeah, but
And they would have had to approach Fire Hall members. I mean,
no,
you are as
no,
well.
no,
You're in new income.
no, that's not,
To rent this?
no, that's not true.
They don't
There-
approach anybody from the Fire Hall?
Yes,
to-
one person, the
Good.
secretary, and that's it. And if you came and said, I want to have the hall on Monday or Sunday or Saturday, she writes it down in the book, the hours, and
And you
that.
guys have no knowledge of what your fire hall is being used for?
No, not generally.
I mean, you have a two-way avenue. I mean, you've been very active in this fire hall for, I believe, over 50 years?
Yeah.
And yeah, Peter does fall a lot on his face, and I am friends with Peter, and I will admit that. But the fire department knew, someone knew that this meeting was gonna happen.
One person knew.
Right,
and
and the meeting was published in a newspaper 20 miles south of this project, and that's where people are mad. That's where people are
Okay,
mad.
well, every government agency has to pick an official newspaper.
Right.
Allegany County, the only paper other than the Cuba Patriot is the Wellsville Daily Reporter. We picked the Cuba Patriot because it's the closest to the town.
It looks like to your constituents, and I'm not saying this is anyone's fault or the IDA's fault, because they're here to try to get our opinion as people. But when you pick a newspaper to publish, and you're picking it 20 miles south of the southern border of a huge project that a lot of people are very much against, it looks fishy. It looks very fishy, because as someone else had stated, Cuba could have published it, and Alle-Catt, their project headquarters are up in Arcade, they could have put it in the Arcade paper as well, where a lot of residents from Centerville would have seen it. And I'm not poking fun at anybody, but that seems very underhanded. It just seems very underhanded. And if if Peter did get an email on the 13th.
Oh, please don't
he should have-
confuse me with Peter.
Yeah, I just misspoke, I'm sorry, I apologize. If that meeting was sent to him and he did not fail, or he failed to inform the board, even the new incoming members, that's on him. And he needs to be talked to by you guys, saying, hey, I'm a little bit upset about this because I got my butt chewed by my constituents that voted me in.
Well, we have a meeting this afternoon, the final board meeting, and I am trying to do things next year that'll give us more access. Rushford's Facebook page is controlled by Peter. We can't post stuff.
Most of us are here because of Facebook, and most of us are here because of this young lady.
Oh,
Because she posted it out.
okay, I understand
and then
that.
I
I'm just trying to
resent it
tell you
out.
what we're trying to do, but I can't control what
Right, you
the
can't control what the IDA does. The IDA
does.
doesn't want to know about Rushford politics. They want to know about our opinion about this project.
I do think after gone through a couple other solar projects just recently, it's very apparent that we need to start posting more on a Facebook page.
That or
I
other
mean,
newspapers.
it's not something that's required, but I think we're going to do that.
Right,
Because
just to
that's
protect
it.
yourself.
I know, but it's the only way that we ended up getting a lot of people at one of the solar projects, because somebody posted on Facebook. Because, you know, you're supposed to put it in the paper, we put it in our paper.
Right.
But it looks like something we'll look into, because in this new age, a lot of people don't read papers, period, not just the fact that that's our official paper.
Well, also the format of this is extremely misleading, because you don't even get to the part where it even talks and names Alle-Catt Wind Energy LLC until you get 2 complete paragraphs down.
Oh, as far as the heading itself?
Yes,
Okay.
I mean, I've been diligently searching through the Olean paper, the Cuba Patriot, just because I can kind of see,
See the heading.
well, because I can see the way that
Sure.
Invenergy wants it to be posted so that
Well, that
everyone
wasn't their
scrambles.
posting, that's our typical posting, but we'll talk to our lawyers about that, okay?
I'm not sure of the town, but what is the town that's on Genesee and Centerville that have, that area has what, 50, 60 wind turbines up there?
Eagle Bliss.
What are their pros and cons?
Excuse me, can we just try to tell,
You know, I
so we
don't
know
know.
who's responding, so we can kind of keep some notes.
You know, I don't know, like I said, I go by there quite a bit, and I notice, like, you know, like, there's quite a few of them. What are their benefits and what are their, go ahead.
My name's Jeff
Thank you.
DeVespa from
Thank you.
Centerville. I can answer a couple of his questions. I'm on Lost Nations Road. I border the Noble Bliss Wind Park. And I can tell you that post-construction, there were over 70 complaints about noise, shadow flicker, tainted wells, loss of property value, very few of which were ever resolved. If I understand correctly, they do not pay any town tax right now, but that pilot is 10 years from being expired. 10 years from now, you look at what's going on in Fulton County when the pilots do expire, and these developers say these projects aren't worth much, so we're not going to give you much anymore. With all due respect to these board members, they don't represent me, but they did a great disservice to their residents because Invenergy came in, said this is the law we want you to write. They did exactly what what Invenergy asked without any negotiation. They wrote laws that somebody could put a turbine 660 feet off a neighboring property line and not even negotiate with them. They could have had decent setbacks for noise, for distance, but they opted not. They did exactly what Invenergy asked. Instead of negotiating with the neighbors, they're screwing their neighbors. You guys did this to these residents that are affected by this. You had every opportunity to write a law that would protect the residents, but instead you sided with Invenergy. The environmental assessment form, part 1, at least in Centerville, they lied. They said there was going to be no negative impact. Part 2, they submitted empty. They didn't even fill it in. Kurt, you guys accepted Centerville's wind law without even reading it. You accepted Centerville's wind law before Centerville even approved it. I mean, look at this. I mean, here is the breakdown of the IDA. Your legal counsel is Dan Spitzer. He's been pushing wind energy for the last 15 years in this area. I don't see this as being unbiased. This is what makes us think that you're just as bought as these guys have been. This does not make you look good when Dan Spitzer, the guy who's pulling all the strings on all these puppets in Centerville, is pulling your strings as well. I don't believe you've looked at any of the negative impacts of this thing, and we fully expect you to do so before you pass any pilot. I mean, you guys consider yourselves Republicans and conservatives, and I mean, here you are riding Cuomo's coattail on this bullshit liberal agenda. I mean, this is crony capitalism. This is the government picking out the winners and losers. This is the reason why this area is struggling. This is why our taxes are so high. This is why there are so few jobs. This is why our rates are so high, is because he's handing money to these corporations that do nothing for us. I mean, you are complacent in the position this county's in. Giving these people a pilot is just going to create dead zones where these turbines are. Nobody's going to invest in their properties. Nobody's going to put up new builds. We were able to see that when Invenergy put their project in Orangeville. We looked at the 9 years prior to them going online and 9 years after, and there was a great decrease in new builds and construction and remodeling in that area. Nobody invests in areas where the property values plummet. You can tell me that somebody's property values didn't plummet. I don't believe it. We've got plenty of surveys that weren't provided by the wind industry that prove that it affects property values. I've got a statement prepared for Centerville, but that's in a few hours. Okay. That's about all I've got to say.
Yes, sir.
My name is James Kogel. I am a resident and a landowner in the town of Canasteel. Before I read the statement, I'm sitting here listening to this, and I gotta tell you, I've heard it all before. Somewhat to the defense of the members of the IDA, the timing, the procedure, the techniques that I've heard complained about are 100% pure invenergy. I can list from personal experiences a dozen different episodes where this very same thing has happened and people fall for it every time. And Invenergy, I guarantee you, will turn around and say, see, nobody's against it in Rushville. Rushford, hey, only a couple of dozen people showed up. That means we're in. As to Mr. Bliss and the other people who seem to deal in innuendo and secondhand information, look around. There is enough documentation of what has happened on these other projects that have come to fruition that you don't need to deal in conjecture. There is cold, hard evidence of economic impacts, health impacts, property values, assessed values. It's all here, folks. And the only reason I can speak with any so-called authority is because I have spent the last 2 years digging into this stuff, and I got to tell you, it's not easy to find the truth, but it is there. Now, as far as the statement that I wrote, I want to first note that although I'm a resident of a neighboring county, being involved in a project nearly identical to yours, I share much in common with you, and my concerns and familiarity with these projects very much applies here. As such, I trust that I will not hear, as I have heard in my own hometown or nearby, that you're not from here and this is not your business, you should go home. I am from here, and it's everyone's business. And what affects us in the next county will affect you also, and vice versa. So please don't fall for the pitch that it's happening to somewhere else, to somebody else, and it doesn't affect me. There's nothing that the developers like more than to use the divide and conquer technique to further their own goals. These so-called wind farms will not exist in isolation, but they will be inseparably linked to each other, as in the Canasteel wind development. Thus, all of the impacts of one are of the others also. I'm going to try to limit this a little bit. I could go on for the rest of the day here until you're all asleep about what I have found about health impacts, eagle kills, you name the topic, but I will limit it mostly to the economic. The much touted benefits attributed to wind energy, I have learned through 2 years of study, are far outweighed by its shortcomings. As one small part of a diversified power system, wind might be acceptable. And from an engineering standpoint, which I have a dabbling of knowledge in, you have to have diversity in sources of power. But not as the single salvation it's advertised as. This is a salvation based mainly on an uninformed, unsubstantiated, politically motivated agenda forced upon us from on high. Why, then, has wind energy gained such seeming support in the face of so many well-documented shortcomings? The earnest, enthusiastic developers' representatives really don't give a damn about clean energy. They don't give a damn about CO2 emissions or clean air, and they don't give a damn about you, your health, your community, or the long-term economic and social impacts on it. Their one sole motivation is M-O-N-E-Y. And I'll explain a little further. A wind project and its infrastructure is built and survives almost solely through subsidies, another name for which is your tax dollars. These subsidies flow in from numerous sources at the federal, state, county, and municipal levels in too many different forms to list right here. Most important is that the subsidies are given based on the potential output capacity of the wind farms, not according to the number of windmills as commonly thought. In fact, once built, the turbines do not even have to be operating. It's only the potential output that's considered. Hence, the greater the possible generating capacity, the greater the subsidies, with little incentive for operation beyond that. Some other important points bear consideration. What happens to the power after that is subject of some concern. It's been established that in recently approved nearby projects, they will be limited in the amount of power they can feed into the existing grid, which is already nearing its peak carrying capacity. Why then would you build additional wind farms with excess capacity? You already know the answer: money and subsidies based on the potential generating capacity. These new installations must already reduce their output in times of peak load, such as summer, exactly when the power is needed the most. And it doesn't stop there. A recent audit discovered that the Niagara Falls hydroelectric power facility, the most renewable energy source of them all, has been ordered to intentionally reduce their output so the grid may accommodate more wind-generated power. In doing so, trading power costing 4 cents per kilowatt hour for that costing 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour. If allowed, this one source of hydroelectric power alone could generate an additional 1.5 terawatts, that's terawatts of electricity, enough to power an additional 150,000 homes. So why do we need wind? If you were thinking, why not build a whole new transmission system? Well, it's been tried. There was a recent proposal to build an entirely new trunk line across the length of the southern tier to New York City, the ultimate destination of all upstate generated wind power. In a legal challenge, the system was soundly defeated by a coalition of southern tier townships through which the lines would pass without providing any benefit to them whatsoever. I've heard of no interest by the developers in expanding or upgrading the transmission system. This is the responsibility of the utilities, not them. I can only assume that this lack of interest stems from the lack of tax incentives offered to the developers for doing so. On another point, you've already heard of the promise of job creation from the project. As with the windmills themselves, this employment bonanza will be short-lived and will benefit mostly out-of-town, out-of-area workers. Invenergy admits that in the case of the Canisteo project, one that's spanning 5 townships, only 5 to 7 employees will be needed on a permanent basis. And here's an interesting fact. In neighboring Steuben County, their IDA contributes heavily to these projects in the interest of job development. The Paris reports, that is the Public Authorities Reporting Information System, publicly available annual document generated by IDAs, shows that in 2017, $2.3 million was given to the Howard, New York project in Steuben County in the form of tax exemptions. This in return for pilot payments of $479,000. This for a project which now employs a total of 2 persons. The numbers are proportionately similar for the Cohocton and Marsh Hill projects in Steuben County. And remember, those tax breaks must be made up by someone. Ask yourself who, when you receive your next property tax increase, as we just did in the town of Canisteo. And that was immediately after they welcomed Invenergy with open arms. So did we really receive a decent return on our investment? And where does the power go when it leaves the area? It's required that a purchaser be contracted as a condition of site approval. In the case of the Canisteo project, this being the New York Power Authority of New York City. However, we know nothing of this arrangement, the one in which we are the supplier, since the terms appear to be confidential, and this even after one local entity has filed a full year of FOIL requests, which have not been answered. Why then should the Allegany County IDA or any upstate agency give away our tax money to benefit an out-of-state developer so that they may jeopardize our health, undermine our property values, defile our upstate countryside to generate unnecessary power that will not benefit us, only New York City? As a personal note, I recently read a fascinating book that dealt with the evolution of the Cold War and post-World War II Europe. The author, in describing one very well-known world leader, stated, and I quote, "He came across as a straight talker, honest and smooth as hell. When it suited him, he could be a good listener. At the conference, he followed his usual practice of ignoring facts when they didn't suit his argument, while relying on ambiguity to win compliance." I'll read that again. He followed the practice of ignoring facts when it did not suit his argument, while relying on ambiguity to win compliance. That passage jumped off the page at me as an almost perfect description of the wind developers. In 2 years of personal study from many, many sources, I've learned that trying to extract honest, accurate, complete, and consistent information from these individuals is almost impossible. They will avoid direct questions, instead giving irrelevant, vague, non-committal answers, contradict themselves, or outright lie if it suits their cause. And I'll give you just one example of this. I sat through 3 days of evidentiary hearings in Bath in August, only as an observer, not with a legal party status, and listened, so I had a lot to compare to. In one case, a promise was made in writing to the town of Canisteo to provide a letter of credit guaranteeing $10,000 for the decommissioning of each turbine before a permit for construction is issued. That's right in the wind law that Invenergy handed every township over there, and they signed nearly without question. $10,000 per turbine. This, although their own study gives a minimum dismantling cost of $179,000 per turbine after 20 years. At this evidentiary hearing, under oath, a company official stated he saw no reason whatsoever to post that guarantee until the project was in full operation. Not before the permit was issued, but after it was in full operation. What happens if the developer defaults during construction, a crane falls and kills someone, a partially built windmill topples, all of which have happened? Who will be held liable? And why the inexplicable change in terms? It's food for thought. These tactics appear to be standard operating practices in the industry. It's also what leads me to conclude that in all my years of dealing with people, organizations, corporations, enterprises of any kind, that as a group, the wind developers are the most arrogant, the most deceitful, the most contemptible, and the most hypocritical, the most ruthless group of pathological individuals I have ever encountered. They are bent on achieving their own goals regardless of circumstances. I believe them to have little or no integrity or trustworthiness, and under no circumstances do I believe that they or the product they offer would be of benefit to the environment, to my community, or to the personal health and well-being of anyone affected. As with other concerns that I've expressed previously to the DPS via their website and by public statements, and before other counties, legislatures, and IDAs, and in numerous editorials, I therefore would suggest that any consideration for pilot subsidies to support this project or any other be summarily denied. Oh, and incidentally, thank you. There's a postscript.
That was more than 2 minutes, but that's okay.
I'm sharing hers. Thank you, Dr. Clark. The well-known world leader that this author was referring to was Joseph Stalin.
I'm Ginger Schroeder. I'm an attorney representing the Cattaraugus County towns of Franklinville, Yorkshire, and Machias in the Alle-Catt Article 10 proceeding. These towns are actively opposing the Alle-Catt project. I'm also the Cattaraugus County legislator-elect for the towns of Farmersville, Machias, Linden, Alle-Cattville, Mansfield, and Franklinville. I'm a vocal and staunch critic of the shortcomings of this project's design and the shortcomings of Invenergy as its developer. I actually ran for legislative office on this platform, and despite the fact that Invenergy invested heavily in my opponents to try to defeat me, I won on a landslide basis, as did my running mate. Some of the citizens that you see in this room were part of the group that successfully petitioned the Cattaraugus County Legislature in August of 2018 for the passage of a resolution directing our IDA to fully tax large industrial wind projects. Our legislature has done the research. We're convinced that this project will be a net economic detriment to our county, and whatever paltry economic benefits Invenergy is dangling before the host communities will be greatly outweighed by the economic, environmental, and quality of life losses that the collective community will suffer. Thankfully, in the recent election, we won 16 out of 17 of our seats, Republican, and our temperature remains solidly opposed to this project. Our goal is going to be to enact further legislative initiatives and initiate further directives to assure that this project is never built in Catt County. We aim to fully protect our citizens against the economic and environmental harms of this project. And in our county, we fully expect that our IDA will take our lead
and we've actually received assurances from them that they will do so. Many of the Allegheny citizens sitting here today, I think, came here with the thought that this IDA has an open mind. I'm actually of the opposite opinion, for the following reasons. What led to this belief? First, we're here on December 30th. This project is months away from receiving any sort of permitting in the Article 10 process. I know because I was the lawyer in it. I sat through 4 days of hearing, not in his project, but in mine, and we are months away from that. There's simply no reason for your IDA to be accepting an application from Invenergy at this time. Our IDA sent it back to Invenergy when they gave it to them in October, stating just that, premature, get out. Then for you to hold both of these sessions during a work day, during the day when most citizens are at work, and then to hold it between two of the most important holidays in the year, and last, only advertise it in a newspaper that has zero circulation in the two towns to be most affected by this project? Come on. You know, that's either indifference or incompetence. I don't know which. Well, actually, I think it's deliberate indifference. So judging by the diminished attendance in this room, I think it's a goal that you've achieved, and I believe it's a violation of your duty under the law. I think that this public hearing is just an inconvenient road bump in what I think is a rushed bid to pilot this program and to grant it enormous tax incentives on the backs of your taxpayers. Second, as Mr. Tatuska noted, I don't think there's any coincidence here that your IDA shares the same council as the developer. That's a conflict. It's a terrible conflict. Dan Spitzer has been to every Catt County type meeting, all of our town meetings, as a proponent of the Alle-Catt project, representing Invenergy. And they represent you. How many people in this room knew that? The developer and your IDA shares the same lawyer, whispering in their ear. It's crazy. Well, in Catt County, there's also the revenue issue, which is facing you here. I wonder how many people in this room know the handsome money that's going to be earned by your IDA if they permit this project, if they give it a pilot. In Catt County, it'll be 3 times our IDA's annual budget. That is a powerful incentive, powerful financial incentive to approve a project. You know, in the wise words of Upton Sinclair, it's difficult to get a man to understand something when his economic fortunes depend upon him not understanding it. I'm also curious as to whether or not Invenergy's application to your IDA was as inadequate as the one that they submitted to our IDA for this $500 million project. Unsigned, incomplete, missing critical schedules, and containing falsehoods, demonstrable falsehoods. Our IDA said that the application was an embarrassment and that it received better applications from developers of $5 million projects. So if you move forward on this public hearing on a similar embarrassment, if it's an equally poor effort, I think that's going to speak pretty strongly. Lack of permanent jobs. Invenergy states that this project will result in 11 to 13 permanent jobs. That's if all 116 turbines are built. 1 job per 10 turbines is their own estimate. But this project is always changing. In fact, in the 2 years that I've been working on it, 8 hours a day, by the way, for no money, I do this pro bono. This project has changed. It's almost unrecognizable from what was first submitted. So they're now considering a new turbine. And if this turbine gets put in, you may get fewer turbines in your town, and you're certainly going to have less jobs. How many of those jobs have been promised to Allegany County? In general, IDAs are authorized to sponsor only projects that create permanent jobs. An IDA in developing a UTEP, Uniform Tax Exemption Policy, shall, in adopting such policy, consider such issues as to the extent which a project will create or retain permanent private sector jobs. I want to know about the guarantee that Invenergy has made to you that those jobs will be held by your citizens of this county. We didn't get that, and I don't think that it will be. And I think last, you're doing a dance with the devil. You're considering doing business with a bad corporate citizen who has been cited and fined by the New York State Attorney General for its bad acts and its material violations of the Wind Developers Code of Conduct here in this project. Not someplace else, not in Steuben County, here in Alle-Catt. Invenergy failed to make the required public financial disclosures of the self and familial interests of the town municipal officials and employees. This is available on their website. It was only after the AG contacted Invenergy to ask for their defense to the charges that they failed to comply with the code that the disclosure list of all of the people sitting on these boards went from 1 person overnight to 10, then 12, then 13, and now 14 conflicted municipal officials sitting on the town boards who are passing these wind laws at the behest of Invenergy. 4 of them are in this county, and I'll hand this in so that you can have it yourself. So meanwhile, the harm has been done. When we want to look and see what the Attorney General ultimately said about this person, this company that you're thinking of getting into bed with, based on the Attorney General's investigation, including information provided by this office to Invenergy, it is determined by a preponderance of the evidence that it's established that Invenergy has violated the Code of Conduct in a material respect. As set forth above, the Attorney General has considered the relative severity of and relative harm to the public integrity. That's the Attorney General's words, not mine. Occasioned by such violation, they went on to fine them $25,000. Well, I have this to say. For a billion-dollar company seeking a permit in the public trust to build such an expansive project in your community, their excuses for lack of compliance with the simple nature of that code, which is meant to have transparency, which has been lacking in this project from the first get-go, does not inspire any confidence at all in myself or anyone else that this company is going to do the right thing. And this project will greatly affect your citizens. And I think you should think about that, and it should weigh very heavily on your mind when you make your decision about whether or not they deserve your hard-working taxpayers' tax money.
Are you going to be available in the next full meeting?
No, unfortunately. I actually do have to earn a living.
Are there any other comments? Thank you for your comments.
I have a comment.
Oh, we have one more. Just okay.
Hi, I am Yvonne Bellis. I live on Brookside Road, right outside of Rushford. My husband and I moved here in 1974, and we raised our children here. They went to school here. Since then, many things have changed, as they do in all of our lives. I've become a snowbird. We are home for Christmas. We can enjoy the holidays. I've received an email from Stephanie stating about this meeting the day before yesterday. So I'm here just to read a few things from my neighbor who lives, he's exactly right next door to me, and he wasn't able to be here because he's in New York City. So I just want to read a few things. He has said that the World Health Organization has recently issued a study concluding that shadow flicker, infrasound, and the general noise from wind turbines produces negative human health impacts. The Western New York Public Health Alliance, made up of the public health commissioners from all 10 Western New York counties, recently voted unanimously that New York State should not issue any siting permits for any of these proposed projects until baseline human health studies have been conducted. The New York State Association of Public Health Officials has also adopted the same position. You should know that the county legislatures of Erie, Niagara, and Orleans have all gone on record opposing the Apex project in Niagara and Orleans counties. The Cattaraugus County legislature has passed a resolution urging the IDA not to sponsor wind projects. The local laws of all project towns except Farmersville have been changed to provide what Energy has asked to get this project approved. Turbine heights of 600 feet, setbacks 1.1 times the height of turbines, for example, 660 feet. Noise limits, DEC guidelines say, would be intolerable. 45 dBs at night, which is about 20 decibels over nighttime background sound levels, causing chronic sleeplessness and adverse health. And 30 hours of shadow flicker. There's no health standard that justifies even 1 hour of shadow flicker. But no town or any other agency has reviewed the impact Invenergy's recommendations would have on our town's population. Yet our town and others have agreed to these recommendations without study or question. We have laws protecting wildlife in our woods and water. Why are we allowing Invenergy to skirt these laws? I'm sure you have heard about all the eagles in our project area being put at risk, but what about us and our grandchildren being put at health risks also? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes, I'm Karen Harvey, and this footage will be available on Chautauqua Updates on YouTube. Anybody wants to see it? From Chautauqua County's perspective, our county has determined that the economic impacts have been so great that they made a determination to also put forward a resolution that stated no pilot agreements, please, to our IDA, and our IDA has so far agreed. We are experiencing the Arkwright project, which has been 2 years up. It's very different from Eagle and Bliss. It's much taller. And the next one that you're going to experience is going to be another 100 feet to 150 feet taller yet than Arkwright. What happened in Arkwright in 2 years? 15% of the population fled. 150 of them have filed suit because their life has been changed so drastically that they have a class action suit going. That's happened in almost every other town, community that has large, very large wind turbines. The big difference between what's in Bliss and Eagle and what's coming here. 600 feet is not 475. And besides the loss, the realtors have come out publicly to say 30% loss in property values across the board in Arkwright. And the people of Arkwright are saying, guess what? Our taxes are now up 6.8%. How is that possible? We were promised a tax break. 6.8% in 2 years. When our county legislature put forward its statement, and it's 4 counties now, Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, Jefferson, and somebody help me, one more. The statement says, yes, there will be temporary increase economically, but overall, whereas, resolved, there will be a cumulative and overall economic detriment to our community. Therefore, we are stating that no payment in lieu of taxes will be given to any large wind companies further in Chautauqua County. The first 3 went under the radar. Now we've seen the results of the major economic impacts that happened because of that one project, 27 turbines. Orangeville has a class action suit. Everybody knows that, right? Mm-hmm. Those people are not happy. There's 50 people there. It's happening in almost every other community, but they have to sign a silence, a non-disclosure agreement. Our health board, and many others now, but our health board has come out publicly. It's made an international kind of hit in the news media. After seeing the health impacts in Arkwright that are now being documented, have made a public statement that they recommend that no wind turbine this size will be any closer than 1.5 miles from a home. Because if they're any closer than that, the health impacts will have a very great detrimental impact on the health of the individuals. And guess who our attorney is for all of our wind projects in Chautauqua County?
Spitzer.
Dan
Spitzer.
Go figure.
Oh, wow.
Bill Dib lives about an hour south in the county. I met last Friday with the health department officials, remember the thing, Lori and the county, they know no health with the windmills, so if you have information from Kansas Steel and also piece them to the public health department in Belmont. Joe, comment on tax, to understand that the reduction on school taxes, county taxes and town tax. You check your town board, will probably tell you. Charlie, I think there should be a performance bond on each windmill. Tear it down in 20 or 30 years. Can be done before the project starts. If it moves forward, should be in the project.
It's in law.
Okay.
Remember if it's in a community agreement or the
Just a thought.
windmill law.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Dave Savato from Rushford. This past fall, I traveled extensively out west through Nebraska, Wyoming, South Dakota. Saw more windmills than you can count. And one of the things that we never saw near any windmill was a building. So those who are conflicted with the idea that we need renewable energy, that's true, but there's a time and a place for these windmill projects, and Rushford isn't the time or the place.
Thank you. Anybody that hasn't spoke that would like to speak before we close? You can speak as well. Let me just check to make sure. I want to make sure everybody has their chance first, if you could.
Hi.
Yes.
I'm Pam Lichner. I live right next door. I don't know how much I'll see of the turbines, but they concern me. We have new people coming in, which is awesome. We have never, ever, ever had a house for sale more than maybe 6 months in town. We have little children coming in. Unfortunately, what we also see is, I work in the school district, and we have in Belfast 4 children that have autism. These turbines with the flicker are going to set these children crazy. You cannot settle them down. You cannot keep an autistic child in one room. They want to go outside. They want to play. They want to go in different rooms. You cannot put black curtains up to hide shadow flicker in every room of a house. Ms. Bellis, Dennis has a grandchild that has autism or something. Yes. They come out from Buffalo to enjoy the fresh air, to play on his pool, to swim. This child's not going to be allowed to be out here. Dennis has even actually said, if these come in, I will not be able to see my grandchildren if I'm in Rushford. My grandchildren and my grandchildren will not be here. I was told by a town board member, Charlie Bliss, I'll pull him right out, that I was told, oh, if you have a strokes, they're not on the same wavelength as the shadow flicker. You're not a doctor. You don't work with autistic children. You have no idea how these children's brains are wired. You cannot tell me that the flashing lights or the flashing bright light, off light, however it flickers, does not mess with a kid. I've worked with autistic kids for years. Anything can set them off. And then on the other hand, when we have to decommission, I was told, we can scrap the stuff. We make lots of money scrapping. Scrap is bottomed out, scrap goes up, scrap goes down. All right, well, did anybody also put into the thought plan of minimum wage going up? Taking down a turbine is a delicate process. You have to have specialized people, specialized transportation, specialized everything. You can't take these turbines and the blades go to the dump. They have to be buried. You can't reuse them. The only part that is going to be used, maybe to salvage, would be the tower. Okay, well, in 20 years, our EPA might be in nasty little mood and said, hey, guess what? The oil you used for that turbine, we can't accept it. You can't change, you can't scrap it. So now you're losing more money. If an energy is giving us 30,000, roughly to say, I know it's the wrong number, but 30,000 to take down each turbine, and it costs 150,000 per turbine to take down. Where's that other 120 coming from if you can't scrap it? Where is it coming from when minimum wage is going to be skyrocketing, or the specialized cost of having a workman take it down? Where's that coming from? It's going to come from the county. It's going to come from our town. We don't have it. This county doesn't have it. Allegany County is one of the poorest counties in the state. Everybody knows that. Put that into consideration. Put children's health in consideration. Our population is receding. The whole state population is going away because of taxes and Cuomo and their stupidity. But when you have children that can't speak, that can't say to you, Mom, my head hurts. Mom, Dad, that flickering bothers me. And all they do is act up. Now you have parents confused and hurt because they can't help their children. Put that into consideration, please.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that hasn't spoken who would like to speak? I want to make sure everybody has their chance, that's all. There you go.
I just wanted to bring up the decommissioning. I mean, this board here negotiated a host community agreement. What was the number that you figured in the host community agreement for taking down these turbines?
I don't recall what it was.
None of you guys know? I mean, that should have been a major
Look,
concern.
I don't memorize every document.
I mean, you gotta have a ballpark figure. What do you think
really,
you guys figured to take these things down?
Well, I'll comment about what Pam said.
Mm-hmm.
I got an email that I read very carefully that talked about $700 and some $1,000 to decommission one of these things. Mm-hmm. In the article, there was one little phrase that I caught right away because I'm used to reading things like this. It said, exclusive of recovery costs for metal. So then I read an article prepared by an engineer, a very large international engineering firm that I've worked with on a couple of hockey arenas. And they went through the whole process. The generator contains so much copper. At today's value, it would be worth X amount of dollars. The tower is steel. Steel can be cleaned of oil residue so that it can be taken. And there's various other things, the wire and everything else. So we went from $700,000 to about $7,000 is what this respected engineering firm calculated with scrap value. And that's what you have to do when you work on any project. Now, as far as scrap going down to nothing and having no value, that's never happened. And if it does happen, the world has a whole lot more problems than just some towers sticking up. I mean, you'll be looking for the next squirrel to shoot to get food because things will be that bad. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I want to correct something you said. I was talking about the triggering of epileptic seizures when I was talking to you.
You were, sure.
Okay, so I didn't say anything about autistic kids in that conversation that I remember. And it's different.
Have it though.
Huh?
Many of the autistic kids can have epileptic seizures because of flickering and stuff like that. They get set off.
Well,
Even loud noises.
if there are any other comments, I'd like to hear them, but Annette would like to close. Yes.
I'll throw in a little bit on both of these topics. As far as epileptic seizures, it is a medically established fact, and it varies from individual to individual, that a certain frequency of a continuous flashing can, in some cases, induce epileptic seizures. They warn military pilots of this in propeller-driven airplanes. It's an established phenomenon. Again, it varies with the organism, but it is there. As far as decommissioning, stop right there. Before anybody throws any numbers around, by DPS guidelines, you are not to include the scrap value of materials as a credit towards the decommissioning cost. Reason being that certainly we don't expect it to go to zero, but it is such an unpredictable and such a variable that it cannot be established 20 years hence what the scrap value will be. In addition, we speak of recycling the steel. You can't take a steel tube 400 feet tall and take it to your local dealer and say, here it is, if it's X dollars a ton, give me the money for it. No, it has to be cut into manageable size pieces depending on the thickness of the steel. That costs money. There are studies out there and other decommissioning projects which have analyzed this literally down to how much per foot it costs in acetylene, oxygen, labor, which by the way is also a pollution source, to break this into manageable, saleable pieces for recycling. As to the blades, as the lady mentioned, there is no known technology as of yet for recycling carbon fiber composite blades. They have to be buried. And again, given the precedent in the Midwest, there are projects in Nebraska and Kansas being decommissioned already. All of a sudden in North Dakota, the landfills are seeing an influx of tractor trailers bringing blades for deposit. Why? Because of the local landfills have wised up and they're refusing them. I can't picture a landfill in this area, especially after the people banded together a few years ago for Bump the Dump. I can't picture anybody allowing a convoy of flatbeds bringing blades to put in a hole in the ground in this county or anywhere else if they have any sense. As to the cost, they vary widely and wildly. Somebody mentioned $30,000. You've got a bargain from Invenergy. As I mentioned before, in the wind law in Canisteo, they are saying $10,000 apiece. Again, a contradiction. Their very own decommissioning study says $179,000 apiece after 20 years. That in itself is conservative. Most of the numbers I have read in other decommissioning projects, some of which have already been carried out, are between $300,000 and $400,000 per windmill. And you're right, it ain't going to be no minimum wage job. These are going to have to be specialists that do this stuff. Who can tear down a 600-foot thing safely and dispose of the liquids, the oils, the lubricants? One town board member in Canisteo, who was good with numbers, projected ahead. I can't give you his entire formula, but he projected after 20 years a decommissioning based on the rate of inflation, et cetera, based on what Invenergy promised them, which whether they'll do it or not, God knows, that probably that township, and I believe the last count, it varies, like they're trying to vary it here and not come up with a firm number. I believe that was either 15 or 19 windmills in the Canisteo Township. Based on that, projected ahead 20 years, the town of Canisteo will be holding the bag for between $3.5 and $4 million out of pocket in decommissioning costs. And none of it indicates who will actually own these things after 20 years. Because of the decline, the way the production tax credits, the federal credit, is graduated over time. And again, going back to you make money off of subsidies, Canisteo Wind LLC, Alle-Catt LLC, all owned by the parent company Invenergy, after a few years, when they have extracted what value they can from these things, they sell the projects to another LLC. You will have no way of knowing who that is or what their financial condition is because they are privately held. You don't have access to that information. The suspicion is that some of them are even overseas held companies, just as Iberdrola is now with NYISO. So you don't know what your financial liability is going to be. As far as you know, they could conceivably walk away from these things and just leave them standing. What happens to the owner who has one on their property then? They hold the bag. They will be paying assessed value on their property and the value of that wind turbine. You can't afford the taxes? Guess what? You forfeit. And now the hot potato goes right on. Who owns the property? The bank, the state, the locality? Who wants a thing with a windmill? And yet it will still stand there as a derelict, abandoned piece of machinery. So all around, and this is something to look at, is the long term of this thing. Not just health-wise, but also economically. Sounds real good this year. Your school district, your township is going to get X amount of money. They don't give it away for free, folks. There's going to be a string attached, and it might not be during the term of these particular board members or this particular IDA. It might not be during the term that we own the property, but sooner or later, the bill always comes due. And we face the same situation with well-established property values declining. We've owned the house for 25 years. We've done massive improvements. Our taxes go up every year. Our school taxes, when we first bought in Canisteo, were something like $700 a year. And I believe our most recent one was $2,500. And that was after our beloved school district promised us great, great savings through merger. They skyrocketed. Who is going to want to sell that property or buy the property? How can I ever recover my investment from it? And they know it. So again, look at the long term down the road, not this month, not next year. Look at 5, 10, 20 years down the road before you make any judgments. And again, thank you.
Thank you. Any last comments? Yes, ma'am.
I don't think I could have said anything about decommissioning better than you, but you've actually sat through the DPS hearings, and in fact, salvage value will not be considered by the DPS, so that is an absolute fact. But you need do nothing further than to go on the internet and look at the most recent town being faced with taking down 2 wind turbines in Falmouth, Massachusetts. November 12, 2019 article, $2.5 million to decommission 2 turbines. This county is going to be holding the bag on that. That's why our county's figured out that this is a net economic loser, and I think you guys should come to the same position. I will.
I have a question. Why would the county, okay, because the IDA involvement, because the IDA is the owner of the project, but why would the town be liable for decommissioning costs?
You're asking me that as a lawyer? Why the town would be liable for it?
Various people have made the statement that the town will be responsible for the decommissioning costs.
Well, actually, if you read Invenergy's lease, which I've never read a more one-sided predatory legal document than Invenergy's leasehold, it says you will be taking down your turbine.
We don't.
It does.
We don't have any lease with Invenergy.
Well, whoever it is that has the leases. Those leaseholders will be holding the bag. It says, if after 1 year, Invenergy does not take down the turbine, and guess what? Invenergy is an LLC. That stands for, folks, limited liability company, limited to the amount of assets put into the company. The leaseholder's left holding the bag. It says, after 1 year, if we don't take it down, you leaseholder can take it down and chase us around for the money. That's ultimately why people think it's going to fall on the counties and the towns. These properties are going to go into defunct. And then who's going to own them? You're going to own them, the county, the town.
Well, why would the town own the turbine?
They'll ultimately own the property because the landowner will default because they're not able to pay their taxes on it. That's why.
Okay, well, that's possible, but not entirely.
It's the same way we acquired the property on Main
I'm not going to argue
Street.
about it. It's happened elsewhere.
Yeah, we've gotten past comments. If we could, any last comments? And I do appreciate all your discussion, but I'd
Just
like
one
to
quick
stay.
question for you guys. Again, my name is Danette Dexter. Has anyone done a study on how these windmills will affect the towers for communications for our emergency services? Or has any study been done, since we do not have a cable or internet provider that is a solid line cable? We rely, a lot of us, on either satellite or radio communication through our WISBs. Has any study been done on the effect of what these windmills may or may not do for emergency services?
I'm not aware, but I will check into that. Okay, thank you. Good question.
Perhaps a little bit of light on that, James Cole with Canisteel. As far as emergency communications, I can't tell you. As far as physical obstructions, as far as potential interference with air traffic radar and communications and military
Weather as
radar
well.
and transportation communications, the FAA becomes involved. They have a site you can go to for I can't remember the acronym. I think is IOEAA. It's basically an obstructional analysis website. Every single tower has to be provided to the FAA with a very specific latitude and longitude. The FAA, in their own good time, will investigate every single one of these sites at the altitude of the tower, and they will determine if there is any interference for anything either military, strategic, communications, and so forth. I don't know if that would extend to local emergency, but at least it's a starting point. It's there on the website, you can look at it, but to actually extract any further information, it's hard to do. You can call them if you have complaints, but they will not divulge a lot other than what they post. They are
Right, yeah, I have
proposed-
their website on
Yeah,
here.
Okay, they're proposed, and then an interim, and then a determination, 3 phases of study on that. There were a couple of towers in Canisteel which they determined were a conflict. After all, they're on high ridges, low-flying aircraft, stands to reason. But as I was told by an FAA technician, even though this is there and they are bound to follow these FAA reports, One technician told me he was driving to his office in Rochester and he saw these towers at Cohocton. And he asked his supervisor, what's this windmill project? And I said, there is none. We've done no internal studies on obstructions around Cohocton. They put them up anyway. What can be done? They're not going to take them down.
Right.
So it's there, it's for the good, but again, does the developer follow it? The letter of the law and the spirit of law, who knows?
Well, Invenergy has a representative here. You work for him, right? You work for Invenergy?
Yes,
So
I didn't want to.
you can ask all these questions of this gentleman. I'm sure he's very well informed.
Yeah, thanks. I will be available after this one and at the next one to get information to you, phone, email, whatever works best for you.
He just said he doesn't want it to be in the public record.
Of course not.
Why not?
Well, I mean, obviously I'm biased. I'm not offering support or distance against the project. Just saying, we're here for public information.
If we're all set, we'll close the public hearing. I do thank you for all showing up. I appreciate it. We will take everything into consideration. We're not making any, this decision in the immediate future will be at least February, probably March. Oh, yeah.